Welcome back to the program. We've heard much from the education specialists about certain issues facing Thai educational system. Now let's shift a little bit of focus to South Korea's education reform.
Especially over the last 2 decades, South Korea has shown there are many ways to reform the education sector. It has extended its class size and schooling hours to meet a surging demand for better education, as well as allowing students from all socioeconomic levels to do well on examinations, including the sophisticated problem-solving skills on the Program for International Students Assessment, or also known as PISA.
Thailand learn from the reform that you have done in your country as far as education?
Okay, the Asian countries now are all the experiencing the changes, especially in the education. Since in the industrial era, we all have to catch up those Western countries. So that's why our education system is more like rote-based, and students have to memorize all the things, and teacher just teach. But in a knowledge-based global society, that is what Asian economies are going. And so education have to change too and follow this trend. And to help our children to grow as a global talent in this era, we have to put more energy and help in school and teacher training. And so, and this kind of a change cannot be happen overnight, because the key elements of the success of reform is in the teacher. So, as you know, the teacher cannot be trained overnight. So, the reform is go very slowly. So, parents, people, and even the government must be very patient with the progress of the reform.
Do you guys think teachers' incentive is really, significant to this change too? Because, say in Thailand, what's in it for them? I only get paid this much, and why do I have to put all the energy and time for all this? If, and I see this as like a domino effect. The students are learning from the teacher. The teachers are taught from what they're told to teach, and that's instructed by the.
And also how they were taught.
Exactly,
when they were
too.
students, yeah.
And so, I see the changes happening. I don't know. What do you think? What's your thought on it?
So one of the things you have to recognize is that this is a system, right? If one of the parts doesn't work, the learning goals, the curriculum, the instruction in the classroom, the professional development that supports the teachers, the assessment, all these things work together. So they're all parts. And you have to get, and it's going to take time, going back to the time part, to get all the parts really aligned so that they work together really to promote deep, meaningful understanding of science, so kids can solve problems and apply their knowledge to understand the world. It's just gonna take time. And part of that is the teachers, right? So if you have really good curriculum goals, you get your learning goals, you got good curriculum, and you have good assessments, and the teachers are out of line with it, right? Then it's not gonna work. So it's providing professional development, providing appropriate support to teachers to be able to do this, because it will, as Tom said, take time to help the teachers understand these new practices. If they themselves have been taught in a manner in which science is a body of knowledge, and all of a sudden they're expected to go in their classrooms, they're actually supposed to do investigations where the kids actually learn from the materials, and they're supposed to seek ideas and put ideas together and use evidence. That's a very different way of teaching than they experienced, and so that's going to take time. On that there's going to need to be lots of professional development, and so so you have to get those parts to work together. And when Tom said you have to have a 1, 5, and 10-year plan, that's what the country's going to have to do. You're going to have to start to build those different pieces, and then get some pilot sites that work throughout the country that other teachers can go and visit, and they can see that this can actually work. So it's not something that you can think you can do in 1 year,
Right.
and all of a sudden it's gonna be fixed. It's gonna be a long process because it is a system.
Say something at what's needed next. As Joe was pointing out, this is a complicated system. There's at least 5 or 6 major parts that need to work together. So one of the things that needs to be done is to build a big plan, and it has to be a national plan. It has to bring together all the parties that are needed. We saw a lot of people in the group today, at the meeting today and yesterday, that are important. However, we didn't see one group, and it shocked me. We didn't see the people who do the assessment from the ministry. They were not here, and yet that's one of the main things. I believe they were invited, and they were not here. So there's already, you know, you can see if that group of people aren't involved, it's going to break down. Just as we were talking between Joe and I, between the goals and the assessment. So it needs to be a national and inclusive debate, and then a good plan needs to be put together.
Now that you're saying this, like for me as a journalist, I hear all these wonderful, beautiful ideas and 5-year, 10-year long-term plan and stuff. It sounds wonderful, you know, but when it gets put into use, I just need a little, not me, I'm sure a lot of Thai people need a little good faith for like, can we really trust in you? Like who's actually going to running this? Like the whole change in a system and stuff, because I hear all these ideas and I hope that it works out.
There is an issue in Thailand,
Right.
and also in other developing other countries, about stability of leadership. People change too frequently.
Exactly right.
So you don't need strong leadership, but you need stable leadership that can guide a reform over time. Other countries have done it. You know, there's been great progress made in Korea. I mean, Korea is, you know, past the United States in many indicators, and has made great progress over the last 20 or 30 years in improving education. Other countries that are less advanced, Mexico, Brazil, other countries have made really good progress, and it shows up in international indicators. And they've done it by being focused and by being persistent. Someone said, you know, the key to improvement is persistence.
And that's what we're lacking in Thailand.
That's true. And getting people, what Mark mentioned, getting agencies to work together, having leaders that bring them together and create a common agenda. That has to happen here to make this work.
You know, you do need resources too. So we didn't mention that as part of the puzzle. So I just want to say this: if you really are going to take a reform-based curriculum like a process like we talked about, it's going to take a lot of resources. There's going to have to be new things in the classrooms, right? If you're going to actually get kids, rather than sitting at their desks just listening to the teacher talk, but rather they actually doing stuff in the classroom, experiencing phenomena, that's going to take resources. They're going to have materials. It's also going to take lots of resources with the teachers in professional development. So while you don't want to necessarily pay for performance, all the work that the teachers are going to have to do to learn these new curricula, it's going to take extra time, weekend time. The teachers have to get, compensated for that. So these are all resources that are going to be needed. So it's not it's a challenging process, but it can happen. And having a plan is one way to hopefully allow it to become more stable through different administrators. Unless other people say we're going to come up with a new plan, then there's nothing much you can do about it. But if you have a good set of standards in place, it can help guide through different administrations.
You may wonder how Thailand will achieve these things, as suggested by education specialists. Well, they offered words of wisdom of what very much needed to not only reform the education system in the country, but also to be a leader of the region.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things to be optimistic
Right.
about. I mean, the first step in solving your problem is to recognize that you have a problem, right?
Exactly.
And this conference and other things, the work that's going on standards at IPST is recognition that there's a need to create a more focused and aligned system. So there's discussion underway and work underway that's in the right direction, and that's encouraging, and that Thailand needs to build off of that. So it's not the case here where there's nothing to build from. There's a lot to build from.
So, in addition to the national leadership to drive the education reform, in addition to that, much more important thing is to which way is the reform is going. So in a democratic society, even though the government has a strong leadership, what is much more important thing is the reform based upon the accordance with people's sentiment and social needs. That is much more important. And as long as the people agreed upon which way this education should go, it doesn't matter whether it's a strong leadership or weak leadership. School and teacher is the key elements of the education. So help those schools and teachers are motivated to teach the children. That is much more important. Things, I think.
Well, I think the start has already begun in that they're reforming the standards, the learning goals. That process is already in place. I think that's the very first place you start. After that, you then need to figure out how to assess those. And that is a separate step, and it too is going to need resources, as Joe was pointing out. And it needs a new way of looking at tests too. So it needs to be a spirit of reform, I think, coming to the test. And that's something that, the testing agency might find hard to accept, because they've been doing that, I'm sure, for many years, and as far as they're concerned, they're successful. So that will be a change of attitude will need to occur. But again, it needs to be under the umbrella of a large national aim and a national plan. And then I think the different agencies will come into line.
So one of the things that's really important is to have this alignment between the learning goals and the assessment. So Mark, we already mentioned this briefly, but if you have learning goals that basically focus on kids writing, constructing evidence-based explanations and doing investigations and using evidence, but your assessments don't focus on it, your assessments are basically fact-based, then the system's going to fall apart. And what you see will happen is that teachers will go back to teaching the way the test is designed. And so really trying to work really hard, that's why having these standards is really important. Then you have to, like Mark said, you really have to figure out how do you create assessments that really match up with those standards? Because that's how you get this alignment that we were talking about.
Efforts and resources will be much needed to drive change into Thailand's educational system. Whether Thai kids can or cannot compete with the rest of the world, strong leadership will be needed.
That's it for Tour 2015 today.
You can follow us again every weekday from 3:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. on the Nation channel. For today, สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะ